Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week we're creating a squelch, and not just a normal squelch. This one we want to have a bit of character, and I'll demonstrate what that means, but first I'll explain what I want, so that will help conceptualize what we're trying to achieve. We have a 4-bar loop here, so I'll play this back so you can hear what's in the background, and that will give you some context. Once more. So in the original section that I had looped, this 4 bars here, I want to have a squelch in this section that essentially adds as a long build-up. I'm not going to say riser, but that kind of vibe, if you like. Something that introduces the next section. So what I want is I want it to be a normal squelch in this first half, and then I want in the second half for it to break down really, really low and sound more like a click. Or another way of saying that, I want it to start off as a squelch, like I said, but then want it to stretch so much that it sounds like it's breaking towards the end. Hence the file name, squelched to breaking. So let's draw in just a held note on D sharp 1. We know it's going to be quite a low sound, and then we'll open up our trusty serum. Now the first thing we want to do is ensure we have a saw wave, although don't let that stop you from experimenting. That's how all the best sounds are made. We'll turn down phase randomization. We will add a filter. Let's just go bandpass 24, put it around there, turn the resonance up, bit of drive because why not, and then we'll attach LFO 1 to the pitch. And we have the ubiquitous Psytrance squelch. So I think a rate of 1.4 is going to work. However, let's change this to hertz because we want this rate to change over time. And the best way to do that is ensure that it's on hertz. That way you get a steady ramp up or down rather than a stepped movement when it's on BPM. So let's keep it on 1/4 and we'll just type in 1/4 and you'll see that this automatically recalculates. And I should point out at this point, this sound can be recreated on most subtractive synths. There is nothing really that specific that I'm doing in Serum that can't be replicated in most other synths out there. Some things are a little bit easier, like what I just did here with the LFO, but generally the same sound can be done in anything. So that sounds good. Let's go over to LFO 2 because like I said, we want this modulation to speed up and slow down over time. So here in the shapes, let's do basic flat 50 and then we'll come up to the matrix and then we LFO 2 up here and then in here we will do LFO rate like so. Let's put this on bipolar because we're not quite sure whether we want it to speed up or slow down or perhaps even both. And by having this set at 50, we can either go up to speed it up or we can go down to slow it down. So we'll draw another point here and then we'll turn that up and then we'll also turn the depth of this up as well. So now we can hear, well, let's change this to 4 bars. And over the course of this 4 bars, we're going to hear this rate increase. Let's go even faster just because we can. And because I'm having fun, let's draw in a little pattern. Let's go down and then we'll go up dramatically. Let's put it back to where it was. And then for now, we're going to just disable this. We'll come back to this. Now the next thing I want is the breaking section. Now the way we're going to do this, we're going to pitch it down so low that we can only hear the clicks. And actually let's give a bit of a demonstration on that. Let's turn the pitch down quite substantially. Basically like that. And in fact, let's turn this back on just temporarily, just to give you a bit more of a flavor of what I want it to sound like. So how do we do that then? Well, quite simply, we just turn the pitch down. So let's put this back to 0. And in octave 3, let's once again change this to 4 bars. And we'll put this on to pitch. Here, we will change this to basic and 50. You can start at 0, then go all the way up. But logically, this makes sense for my tiny brain. Keep it in the middle, and we can either go up in pitch, or put it down and then go down in pitch. That seems like a very logical way for this to be structured in my head. Over to the matrix, we have LFO 3. This is bipolar, which is good because up or down, like I said. And then we want it to go down at the end of the 4 bars, or maybe somewhere in the middle. We'll draw this in later. And from our experiment earlier, we know that 4 octaves sounded right. So let's put this 48 semitones, put that in. Now, don't be confused by this. We have this going up in a positive way because this is positive modulation. And it's positive modulation in relation to this, if that makes sense. So because this is going down, that also means the pitch is going to go down. If I turn this up, the pitch goes up. So let's keep it down, and then we'll move this across maybe to there so we get that coming in a little bit earlier, just so we can hear it. Let's maybe even try 5 octaves now. So that's starting to sound good. We are still getting some high frequencies coming through because of this coarse pitch modulation. So that's turning it up even though we're turning it down, if that makes sense. So on LFO1, we're constantly turning the pitch up, which is fighting against this modulation here. So let's go over to LFO4, and we're going to put this on the auxiliary source of LFO1. We're going to turn this to 4 bars, and let's leave it as a triangle for now, so we can listen to how this works. And essentially, over the course of 4 bars, it's going to turn the modulation from 0, this LFO isn't going to work at all, up to its peak in the middle here at the end of 2 bars, and then back down to 0. So you can really hear at its peak around here, because after this point, it starts to turn down the pitch. So now that we know that that is working, we want the modulation to be in full effect at the start, and then we want it to die off towards the end, and that will stop it fighting with this pitch bend modulation that we have in LFO2. Let's put this down around there. I just turned it down another octave, so we're now at -6 now. Let's go over to LFO6, and we'll attach this to the cutoff. We can have unipolar for this, that is fine. And here, let's make this sample and hold. We'll put mono on, turn smooth up, and we can keep it at 1/4, or maybe do something funky like go 1/4 dotted. Let's now add an EQ. We already have this on, it's just deactivated. And let's attach LFO3 to the frequency. So what's going to happen is essentially when this is being pitched down, we want to cut out more of the lows. And because this is a negative modulation here, we want this to also be a negative modulation like that. And then one of the final things we want to do is on the rate here. Let's reactivate that. And we're going to put this down. Doesn't need to be perfectly flat. In fact, a bit of deviation there will add to the movement. But we want it to keep it relatively flat. And then we're going to ramp it up in the second half. So in this second half, or in this last quarter, I should say, this last bar, it's going to get quite fast and increase that clicking, or the frequency of that clicking. And by frequency, I mean not pitch in this case, but rate, if that makes sense. And then perhaps on the filter, let's also turn down the depth of that as it progresses. So we have that being controlled by LFO 4 for the coarse pitch. So let's do the same for the frequency. Let's put that in there. So we'll have full modulation on the frequency modulation, and then that will gradually be reduced down to 0 by the time we get to the end of the second bar. And then one final thing we can do, once again 4 bars, turn this down. We're going to turn up the cutoff during that period also. So let's go. It doesn't need to be perfect. By perfect, I mean exactly on this. In fact, if you don't have it, that will add a bit of character to it. You don't want it to be so rigid. Attach that to the cutoff. Just do now a bit of fine tuning. So let's play it back in context. Let's just start a little bit before, only 1 bar before. But after hearing it back, there's just one final thing I want to do. It comes in very abruptly. Now I don't want that. So what we're going to do, in fact, I think we can already use one of our modulations. We have the EQ set to LFO 3. And in fact, let's create another one. We're not short of LFOs here, so let's create another one. Let's take it off LFO 3. So remove that from LFO 3, and then we'll go to LFO 7, and we'll attach that, and that will give you a better idea of what we're trying to achieve here. So let's turn the lowest position down to here, and we're going to turn the highest quite the way up, basically around there. We'll come back and adjust that later. Now let's turn the modulation up, and now when I play this back, you probably won't be able to hear much. Let's solo this, and that is because this EQ is going to be pushing it up and cutting out all the bass. Let's turn it even up higher, so you can hear nothing, and then we'll turn this down like so, make it around here after 1 bar. So what's going to happen over this course of 1 bar, it's going to drop the EQ frequency from here, which is basically the inaudible range, down to here. And then we'll keep it like that. And then towards the end, we're going to ramp that up again, basically where we had it before. So now with this, it's going to cut out all those low frequencies and it will be inaudible at the start like I demonstrated. So that means it will fade in quite smoothly. Let's maybe adjust this just because we can. And we'll do that in context with the playback. We will loop this section. So there we go. Obviously you can tweak that for days with adjusting the rate and cutoff and things like that. But conceptually, I think that's there. And it adds as a nice little lead into the next section. So So there we go. Hopefully you found that helpful, and don't be afraid to experiment and make it your own, and it'll be interesting to hear it in one of your tracks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.